All right, welcome to the second part of this user storing data locally on your device. As you remember in the previous video, we have a screen, we have a view controller with a text field here, and then we have a save and a read. In the last example, when we click on the save and read, we did it to save the information in the user default. And the user default require a key and a value. In this example, I'm going to show you how to store information in a local file, okay, locally on your device. So we have the save and the read. We're going to reuse those in your class, in the Swift class. We have, this is the comment. I commented the code that we used before. So now I'm going to use the code to save to the file, and the same way we can use this to read from the file. Before we do this, I'm going to create a function, a general function that will give me in order to write to a file, it's different than the user default. In order to write to a file, you need the path of that file. And that path is represented by a URL. So I'm going to write a function that says get document directory, and then we will append to this URL the name of the file. So we're going to say get function, get directory, right? And then this function will not receive any parameter, and then it will give me back the URL path to the document directory. So that way, every time I want to get the path to that file, I just simply call this function. So we say let path equal file manager dot default, the default sandbox, again sandbox that is available for you for your storage within your application. And then I'm going to get the URLs, all the URLs. And then for what I'm going to use we're going to use the document directory. We're looking for the document directory. Just pass something here. All right, so we need to get the document directory. What are we looking for is the document directory, which is an enumeration. So we're going to say document directory. And in what? The other parameter is going to be the user domain mask. All right. So this will give me the path for the URL or the path for the directory. All right. What's going on here? Oh, we're missing a comma. No, okay. Now we're missing the comma. Okay, so after this, all we need to do is that we say return the path. So anytime I want to get the URL of the current directory, we need one more step, return path, and then this will give me the list of all the URL. The first one of the directory is the first one, which is 0. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do is in the save, we will use that function that we created to get to the path. We append to it the file name, and then after that we can write to the database or to the local file. So this is the save name. I will keep those, but in your code, you can just highlight them, or if you want to start another project, you can delete them. So here I'm going to say let string equal txt name, whatever we stored, again, text. So that's the text that we're going to write to the file. And after that, let file name is going to be that function that we called, which is get directory dot, and we append to it the name of the file. So we're going to say append path component and the name of the file. What is the name of the file? Is going to be output, for example, dot text. So it's a text file. So we got the value that we want to write. We have the file name now that we're going to write to. With this function will give me the URL, and I'm appending to the URL that I'm receiving is the file name that I want to write to. Now, when we write, sometimes you might get an error. You're out of space, so you want to handle situations where you get an error. So the string function to write to the database will throw an exception, and we need to be able to handle this exception. So we enclose this in a do and with the do and catch clause. So I'm going to say do, and then we're going to say catch. What are we going to catch? If we have an error, we need to print that we could not write to the database. So here you can say print we could not write into the file has failed, right? All right. But if we don't have an error, if that is okay, we can just say that writing was successful, but we need to issue the command to write to the database. And because writing to the database can throw an exception, so we'd say try the string value that we're going to write, and then we say write to what? Write to a file. All right, this is the function that we're going to use. The file that we're going to use is the file name. Actually, not this one. We need to use the write to, not to the file. Okay. Okay, so this is the to with the okay, this one here. So what is the file name URL, which is the file name? So we are writing to this file name, the same file name that we specify here. This one is going to be always true to avoid asynchronous, or to avoid the problem if you're writing, if you're trying to access this file from two different places. And then here we're going to say the encoding that we're going to write. In most cases, this is the same thing that we use, which is a string encoding dot Unicode UTF-8. So because this is a Unicode, a string Unicode that is English, this is the encoding that we will use to write to the file. So if this is the string, we get the file URL. We try to write to the data. We try to write to the file. If we have an error, we will get we'll get a message that the file we were not able to write to the file. But if this was successful, we will not go to the catch. So I'm going to say command copy here and put it here and say writing successful. All right. So now if we run this, and then if I click on, type in anything here, and if I click on save, writing to the file was successful. If you have an error, that we will not get that message, and you will go to this catch message, or you will get this one here to the catch and say writing to the file has failed. All right. So that's how we save to the file. How about reading data from the file? If we're going to use the same thing. We're going to use this one again. So I'm going to copy this guy, and we're going to here and say, we want to get the file name. And after we get the file name, again, we need to, if we're going to write, you might fail. So what I'm going to say do again, and then catch, try and catch error, block. And then here we can say, if we have an error, we're basically going to do the same thing. Instead of writing from a file, we're going to say reading from the file. Say reading from the file, reading the file failed. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute because I'm going to run out of battery. I'll go get the charger and come back. Okay, hold on. Okay, so what happens if, again, the same steps in reverse order. So instead of writing taking the string and writing into the file, we're going to read the content of the file. And again, when you're trying to read something from the file, you might get an error. You can find the file for some reason, or the content is not there. So you need to be able to handle those situations. So the file name is going to be the same function that we used earlier, which is get directory. We append to it the name of the file, the same file name, and we try to read the content of the file. So we say let content equal try. Because we're writing a string, we're going to read a string back. So we're going to try to string from where? From the file that we wrote to. So it's going to be content of, when you say string, and then there's an option here when, okay, you say, if you look for content of, okay, so this is it. Content of what? Content of the file name, which is we defined earlier. And notice when I selected it, it said it throws exception. So now, if this fails, it will go to the catch clause. Now, if this is okay, I can say txt name dot text equal the content. And since it's a string, because we're constructing a string from the file, it's okay. Now, if you're writing a lot of data, you don't want to use a string. You might want to use a text field. You want to use maybe text view or text area where you can write a lot more. So now, if I run it, just like in the previous example, even though I did not, if I didn't click on save, if I click on read, what happens? It should read that file called output.txt from the sandbox within your app, and it will display it in here. Hello there. So now your You can use user default. You can use text file to do that. Now, if I write something different here, and then I click on save, it was saved directly. Now, if I delete it and I click on read, and it will say, have a great day. Is that clear? Even when you close your application, you still, that information is saved within your app, Sandbox, where it's a storage area within your application. So let me summarize what we've done here. For writing locally to your data, to your files, we have in the view controller, we have two buttons. One is called save name, and first, this is the string that we're going to write to the database or to the file. Next, we need to get the URL with the file name. The URL is the path of your file in your application. And we have a function to do that. It's called get directory, which returns the URL, the path of your file. And this will give me the path and return it back to this function, to the calling function. And we append to it the file name. So we will have the full path plus the file name. After we get the file name, we can use the string function write to the file. So we say write to, we specify the file name or the URL that we're going to write to. The automatically true, that means to handle asynchronous access to the file. And then the encoding, most of the time, this is your encoding because you're using UTF-8, Unicode 8. This is the encoding that we use to write to the file, if it is a string text. And then here we say, if it was successful, we say this was successful. And because we're using try, if this failed, we will use, it will go to the catch and says writing to the file has failed. So that's how we write to the file. For reading from the file, this is how we read from the file. We get the same path for the same file name. Again, this could fail. It throws an exception, so we use the do. We say let content equal try string content of the file name, same file name that we've used earlier to write to. The content is going to be a string. We take that value and then we put it in that text field. And if it failed, we say could not reading the file has failed. Any question on this? Any questions? So all right, so we're done for this second part as well. So we will have